Good evening, listeners. You're tuned into the ghostly broadcast, Paranormal Station. I'm your host, Timothy. On the grounds of my farm, I fertilize the soil with testimonies of the supernatural from all over this good earth, reaping its fruits. Sometimes it's answers. Other times, it's simply more questions. To see the modern world of automobiles, one would think it was the foundation of our modern world. In actual fact, the railroads spearheaded us from humble agrarians into the viral force of nature that humanity has become. With that came progress, but also regression. In our conquering of vast landscapes, we made the world smaller. But in doing so, we hid away from corners of this planet yet explored. The deep places of the earth where ancient things tread. Tonight, we journey to the vast continent of Asia to board the trains that will take us through the night, and the senders who rode them shall tell their tales. Our first testimony. Dear Timothy, I'm Niran, and I wanted to share my story with you and your listeners because I believe that I have been given this second chance to do so. I didn't have the best start in life or good chances given to me, but at least I'm alive, and I can cherish each moment for that. I grew up on the outskirts of Bangkok. My father was gone, and my poor mother did her best to look after me and my brothers, but there wasn't enough to go around. Like any kid with half a brain and some nerve, I ran errands for nefarious types throughout the city. I was slowly making a name for myself as a reliable go-getter in open defiance of the law. The money wasn't great, but that's the way it works. You have to earn your way up the ladder. Soon enough, I had a chance to prove my worth. Some Sakhon guys were making a deal, and I was in with the crew to make the drop. If I could help pull this off, I'd be a made man, climbing the ranks to stardom, and all the money I could ever want. The deal took place at a rail yard in the middle of the night, on a disused set of tracks. The place was abandoned, littered with rusty old rail cars and cargo. I was nervous when we pulled up, but I put on a cool, calm face. These Sakhon guys were no joke. They were international operators, moving some serious loads, and we would be in big if everything went right. Looking back now, I was so stupid. We pulled up in our truck and hopped out. Masked men, armed to the teeth, were standing guard around a rail car where they'd stashed their product. Another masked man stepped out. "Are we doing this?" he asked, showing little patience. We agreed and handed him the bag of cash. One of his armed musclemen took it from us, ripped it open, and began counting. Once he'd confirmed it, he nodded to his boss, and everyone started loading the stuff into our truck. As I moved to help, one of the crew I'd arrived with put his hand on me and told me to stay with the truck and keep watch. I nodded and silently did as I was told. I was leaning against the truck and smoking a cigarette when I heard a chug-chug, chugging out in the distance. It was so innocuous that I didn't think anything of it. We were standing in a train yard after all. There were bound to be trains running. Only there weren't any trains, and this yard was abandoned. Before I came to my senses, I heard a whistling wail of a train's horn bellowing into the night. I heard screams and yells from the men unloading the product, and then an almighty crashing of metal on metal. I ran around the back of the truck to see what happened. The train car had been torn to shreds of jagged rusty metal, and broken bodies were strewn about the place. Powder gently fell like snow onto the torn steel, the tracks, the corpses, and the bloody ground, lying in a gentle white blanket. Further down the tracks, I could see a train's light fading into the night, billowing steam and sounding its horn. Then it vanished. After that night, I was done with a life of crime. I moved away and must have been presumed dead by my former employers, as no one bothered to come looking for a missing bagman. I scraped the cash from the floor and made a new life elsewhere. I was given a second chance, Timothy. I don't know what it was or why, but I've got one and will not waste it. Kindly, Niran. Thank you, Niran, for your testimony. We can't possibly know the machinations of spirits that we can't fathom to understand. All we can do is play the hands we are dealt to the best of our abilities. Our next testimony comes from Fyodor. Dear Timothy, I'm writing to you in a vain, last-ditch effort for advice. My name is Fyodor, and I'm a businessman. I oversee my empire from behind the scenes, and I rub shoulders with some of the most powerful men in the world. None of them can help me now. 10 years ago, I was traveling across the Mongolian leg of the railway from Moscow to Beijing. It was a long trip, and I could have flown, but I prefer the luxury of first-class rail travel. If I need to be somewhere in a hurry, I've got representatives to do the flying for me. I was sitting in the bar carriage, enjoying some excellent wine, when this stunning woman approached me. She sat before me without asking, and my man stepped in to remove her. I waved him off and allowed her to stay. She gave me a wry, villainous smile. I've been approached by many of these women in the past, and I know they aren't interested in my looks. Still, the flesh is there for the taking, and I intended to indulge that evening. Unfortunately, she wasn't who I thought she was. I believe she did that intentionally. "Good evening, miss. Care for a drink?" I offered. She declined, but I poured her a glass anyway. "You like to have it your way, don't you, Fyodor?" she said. "That sounds like a rhetorical question," I responded. "If that's the case, you know I like it when good girls do their homework." She chuckled and turned her gaze away for a brief moment. Then she leaned onto the arm of her chair and delicately caressed the nape of her neck with one finger. "Sure, you like the flesh, but it's not what really gets you going." "No, it's power that's your vice of choice," she said. "And you would offer me that over a forgettable night in my cabin?" I asked. "Precisely," she said, with a wry grin. I humored her as she listed everything I had ever done. The empire I'd built, the bodies in its foundations, the skeletons in my closet. At that, I assumed I was being compromised. Groomed to be an asset for some foreign intelligence or another enterprise I hadn't seen coming, but she carried on. She knew things no one else could have. 10 years, she said. 10 years of your empire, built on a mountain of corpses, shining and growing to incredible heights. More power than you could dream of. More than you have now or will ever be able to achieve, she said. "And what's the price?" I asked. "You're a businessman. You love your contracts and deals. The devil's in the details and all that. But no. I won't charge you anything. This is my investment, and in 10 years I'll expect a return," she said. I laughed at her and the silly hypothetical spy game she was playing. "Fine, deal," I said without a second thought. This has been a fun little thought exercise. And you, dear, you've been incredibly entertaining, but now we get down to the real business. How do you know what you know, and how are you about to fuck me? In my bed or in my sleep? "Oh, Fyodor," she laughed. "I'm not fucking you at all." She got up, walked around the back of my chair, and placed her cold, icy hands on my shoulders. I felt a chill in my whole body as she did. She leaned down to my ear. "I just like to watch," she whispered. Then she let go and walked out of the carriage. I didn't see her again, but it has been 10 years. Just as she said, everything thrived. I've known more money and power than I could have ever imagined. I created the foundations of a dynasty, but it is all gone. The 10-year mark came, and it all crashed down. My enemies are at the gates, picking apart what's left like vultures circling. My remaining family have run. My eldest son, my heir, he is dead. I have used every resource left to find the creature doing this to me, but I have had no luck. Perhaps you and your listeners may know more than I possibly could. With the last of my money, I purchased a ticket aboard the Trans Mongolian Railway again. The same route as before. I intend to find this woman to put a stop to this finally. Yours sincerely, Fyodor. Thank you for your testimony, Fyodor. Unfortunately, my listeners and I know about as much as you do. The mysterious fire of the spirit world is incredible and beautiful to observe, but not something to be toyed with. I'm afraid it seems you have made your own bed. Our next testimony is from Mastan in India. Dear Timothy, my name is Mastan, and I've made a career as a public works investigator. The job isn't as interesting as it sounds. It's a lot of phone calls, emails, butting heads with industry lackeys and blatantly corrupt officials. The slow pace of change is grating and demoralizing. Trying to get anything up to code is a monumental task, but someone has to watch out for the people. Even if it is just a few honest men. I'm writing today because I might have finally stumbled onto a win. A train derailed 2 years ago, taking hundreds of lives with it. It was reported as a tragic accident, but something didn't add up. The investigation was quietly shelved. Critical witness statements were swept under the rug, and I was pulled onto a pile of other cases. Still, I couldn't get my mind off of the incident. Something about it was wrong. I could feel it deep inside me. A few weeks later, I started to see them. Ghastly faces of the dead with pale, unmoving eyes staring at me. I saw them standing at the platform beneath my window. I saw them as I drove through town. Men, women, children. At night, I would hear the train scream past. The screech of failed brakes as the colossal machine skated across the metal tracks. The thunderous crash when it toppled over. The cracks and snaps of bones crushed into dust. The moans of those whose final moments on earth were miserable agony as life was squeezed out of them by crumpled metal and broken bodies. I saw and heard them all for 2 years, Timothy, and they wouldn't let me be. They tortured my every waking moment and denied me any respite in sleep. Hunting for answers became my obsession. The more I dug, the more I enraged my superiors. I was called in and chastised more times than I care to count, but the ghosts wouldn't relent. I would see them standing on platforms. They opened their mouths in a chorus of screams, but the only sounds they could make were the whistles of a runaway train and the ear-splitting shriek of grinding steel. Months of toil finally bore fruit, which wasn't what I'd hoped. The train, the tracks it was on, everything had been faulty. The whole thing had been covered up to protect those at fault and to make it look like an unavoidable tragedy. I found myself in an impossible position. I could blow the whistle and reveal the truth in the hope that these spirits could be laid to rest. Risking my job and potentially my life, or I could remain silent and do my best to ignore the wails and moans of the dead. Though it cost me my career, I don't regret my decision. The case is still unfolding, and for fear of any more repercussions, I'll say no more. I will say, Timothy, that the train has finally left the platform. Those poor souls have boarded and moved on to where they are destined, and now I have silence. I have peace. Kind regards, Mastan. Thank you, Mastan, for that amazing testimony. I can see it wasn't easy, but you have brought justice to those who could not get it in life. Our last testimony of the evening comes from Daiki in Japan. The following testimony contains subject matter pertaining to suicide. Dear Timothy, I'm Daiki. I drive bullet trains across Japan. Throughout my 13-year career, I have had 3 people leap in front of my train to end their lives. The bullet trains travel at 500 kilometers per hour at their top speed. At that velocity, the impact on the human body is terminal. What's left of you is either thrown clear by the massive impact or churned into pulp by the wheels. Since the very first incident, I have attended a weekly support group for train drivers with similar experiences. I hardly talk to any of them because, after the third one, I've realized that none of it helps. I cannot forget their faces, Timothy. The look of utter despair. A broken emptiness as the train closes in to bring them to an end. 3 lives were snuffed out in a heartbeat by an uncaring machine while I sat behind its controls, powerless to stop it in time. I can't forget their faces because they won't let me. They stand at my bedside. They ride in the car with me as I drive to work. They're in my cab while I drive my train, looking at me with broken, sad faces. Every week, I attend my support group, and we chat and spill out our guts in vain attempts to make ourselves feel better. There, the victims of each driver stand behind them. Some have 1 or 2. The older ones have much more. Everyone has the same empty, hollow stare. I don't know if they can see mine. Maybe we all can, and we just refuse to talk about it. We've all mentioned seeing the people we have watched die by our trains, but none of us have admitted to the truth. The real truth. We are haunted by our own personal suicides that we played unwilling participants in. How can we bear this curse for those who threw themselves onto the tracks? Why won't they let us be? What justice is this, Timothy? Recently, I've stopped attending the support group. It hadn't been doing me any good, but the final straw was the last night I'd been there. Ren, a younger driver unfortunate enough to kill someone with his train in his first month on the job, hadn't shown up. No one asked where he was, but I knew what had happened. I knew because I saw him. Behind the empty chair across from me stood Ren, with a broken, blank stare and ghastly pale skin. He looked at me, and he realized the truth. His face twisted in pain and anguish. He wailed and sobbed, but it didn't make a single sound. The dead can't speak, at least not in ways we can hear. I stopped going after that. So far, I've learned to live with the ghosts around me. I haven't seen Ren again, and I hope he's moved on to whatever plane of existence we're supposed to end up at when it's over. My ghosts, though, they're still here, still with me. Unmoving and unchanging, clinging to my soul like weighty chains. Sometimes, I wonder what it would take to get them to leave. Would I have to die as Ren did? If that's the case, quiet acceptance seems like a better option. Yours, Daki. Thank you for your testimony, Daki. For what it's worth, you should not have to carry the guilt of things beyond your control. I hope you have found a way to rid yourself of those spirits. That concludes this evening's broadcast. You've been listening to the ghostly broadcast, Paranormal Station. I've been your host, Timothy. If you enjoyed this railroad into the dark tunnels of time, where the dead and the damned dwell within its walls, riding along the tracks into our world, consider a like and subscribe. Tap the bell icon to be notified of all our latest broadcasts and support our work, bringing the supernatural to you. Good night, listeners, and sleep soundly.